Hello, I'm Hope Katz Gibbs, creator of the Incandescent Radio Network, here with my friend and colleague, Tony Farmer, host of the Black Lives Matter radio show. We are thrilled you are here with us today, so let's get started.
Hello and welcome to the Black Lives Matter radio show. My name is Tony Farmer. I'll be your host for this evening, this segment. With me is Ms. Hope Katz Gibbs. She is the co-host and the president of Incandescent Publishing. She is also the creator of the Incandescent Radio Network. And we have the pleasure of this being our first radio show, and we have a wonderful guest that Hope is going to introduce here momentarily. We're so glad to have you here, and we're so glad to start this conversation. So Hope, over to you.
Thank you, Tony. So I'm Hope Katz Gibbs, and it's a pleasure to be doing the show with Tony Farmer, who's my friend in Washington, D.C. I am in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and it's really fascinating how technology is enabling us that no matter where we are, we can have important conversations. I also couldn't be happier tonight than to introduce our listeners to Dr. Reggie Smith. He is the Chairman Emeritus of the Board of Directors for the United States Distance Learning Association, known as USDLA. I met Reggie when I joined the organization in 2017. I joined because I wanted to incorporate distance learning into the work we're doing at Incandescent. And finally, here in 2020, we have the opportunity to begin allowing women to teach women about everything from financial planning to cooking to yoga to just having amazing conversations, women to women for Incandescent Women Magazine, Incandescent Health and Wellness Magazine, and then on Incandescent Radio, our new Black Lives Matter radio show. So Reggie has quite the experience and background. He is the first African-American CEO at USDLA. He's a recognized authority on media and telecommunications issues, and has served as presenter, keynote speaker, and judge at various events and conferences, including Mobility, a Game Changer for African-American Communities Braintrust, the Black Media Coalition Conference, Annual Pacific Telecommunications Council Conference, and Excellence in E-Learning Awards. For his work, he has won an array of other awards for insight and dedication, including the Federal Government Distance Learning Association's Hall of Fame Award, Virtual World Association's Excellence Award, and the Action Heroes Award from the Missouri Association of Community Task Forces. And the list goes on. That is just scratching the surface. So I'm going to step back as co-host and let Tony and Reggie have this conversation, our first conversation. So we're excited to see where this goes.
So Dr. Smith, listen, the first thing I have to do is offer you my thanks. And I'm going to thank you for several reasons. First one is for agreeing to join us and really kind of get us kicked off on this effort that we have strived to open up so that we can have conversation and raise awareness. The second thing I'm going to thank you for is the work that you've done with the Distance Learning Association. I want you to talk a little bit about that, specifically how your work has impacted the historically Black colleges and universities across the nation, and how important that work is now that we're experiencing this pandemic and having to do a lot of distance learning.
Thank you. Well, first, thank you for having me on the show. It is my pleasure to really join you here to open up the dialogue. United States Distance Learning Association was the first nonprofit founded here in the United States in 1987. And I've been involved with the association since I was probably a baby in the 90s, and worked my way through the association as a president for a chapter, eventually joining the board. And so, and eventually becoming CEO for the association. And what that has done is given me a real long perspective on what's happening in the field, what we're seeing now during a pandemic, and also specifically regarding historically Black colleges, HBCUs. And actually, I started out working in distance education in the 90s for an organization called the Black College Satellite Network, which was built doing satellite-based distance education for historically Black colleges, and also providing programming to school districts around the country, including Philadelphia, DC, Houston, etc. So my humble beginnings started as a student at a historically Black college. Ran up to the satellite truck and said, "Hey, I want to do that. Are you guys hiring?" So
I love it.
I'm a little bit on the bold side. You don't get what
Yes.
you don't ask
Yes.
for.
Amen.
So they picked me up as an intern. I started working, and most of my friends said, "Well, you had a job a year before you got out of school." And I said, "Well, it's called hustle."
Yes.
And I believe in hustling, and I probably sleep on an average 5 hours a night. So
Yeah.
regarding historically Black colleges, and from the association's perspective, I've been really working with HBCUs and trying to really expose them to the range in distance learning. And so that starts from really engaging the White House initiative on HBCUs, regardless of the administration. And so each administration, we engage the executive director, whether to come out to do a keynote for our conference, or if there's some particular issues they want to talk to us about. And so we've consistently been involved, or I'll attend their meetings and figure out what's going on. If they ask something about distance learning, we'll engage the institutions. As a graduate of Lincoln University, I've of course bugged my institution about distance education and reviewing strategic plans and gaps that exist in those plans until the pandemic. I think a lot of the schools were doing a little bit of distance education. There are some that are pretty well versed, but some, and probably some programs within some institutions, were kind of given a little hands off because they were such an excellent program, whether they picked out doctors and they didn't want the online part of the institution to swallow their game.
Yes.
Lo and behold, the pandemic happens, and now.
Understood. Right. Wow.
Boom. And so
something you could not have foreseen, even if you had tried.
Oh yeah. And so it's a good thing for us. Unfortunate that a pandemic has caused this, but then also I look at the other side.
Yeah.
A lot of folks may be implementing it wrong and in a rush. And so with that, causing to me what I would see is some harm. So we've been working with HBCUs. We did have an HBCU town hall, HBCU Action Nation. We did that in the first part of the year. As soon as the pandemic happened, we had a really large lineup of folks from the White House, institutions, presidents, and so really to cover every aspect of what was happening with HBCUs, and to really start to bring that out as we look at the finance side, the technology side, the students, the integration of students back into campus, the reuse of open educational resources, OERs, which Bethune-Cookman is using to really lower the price of a degree. And so everyone in higher ed is under a great deal of pressure for the price point that they're providing an education, and especially when you see through the Obama administration where they had gainful employment, where institutions were under pressure for coming out, students coming out with a considerable amount of debt in relation to their potential income that they can earn. And so that was a really good program for us to really get back out there in front of everybody with COVID and everything happening. And then we just recently had a policy forum about a week and a half ago addressing broadband inequities. And so really putting that piece out. And then there's a number of organizations reached out and want to do another event probably in November with our National Distance Learning Week program, and then probably a policy forum to follow on. Regardless of what candidate wins, there are going to be changes. So if Biden wins, there are going to be changes. They may lean more towards some of the things that we saw in the Obama era. If Trump wins, we may still see what's happening on that side. And actually, Trump moved the HBCU initiative from under the Department of Education into the White House, which hasn't been done before. So despite what people are talking about, that's, from what I'm seeing and what I hear, it's a good thing. And so we just have to make sure that the institutions are engaged and really taking advantage of that, regardless of who's in the White House.
One of the things that's near and dear to me is the ability to connect, and to connect broadly across enterprises, across cultures. And in keeping with that theme of thought, I wanted to mention to you that you and I are connected in many ways that I was not aware of before I was introduced to your name. So of the many numerous accolades that I've read and all of the wonderful work you've done, I found out that you and I are fellow alum of the University of Maryland University College, which they now call the University of Maryland Global Campus. And it's so fascinating the work you've done, because in 1997, shortly before I got married, I was challenged by my pastor at the time to finish school before I walked down the aisle, and I was a number of credits short. I'd been going to school part-time, and so I had exactly 36 credits, and the majority of those credits I did online. I did distance learning. So again, connectivity there. And then also I learned that you and our homeboys, we both have the DC connection, and my experiences growing up in DC have impacted me, and of course shaped me in some significant ways. And I think the next thing that I want to ask you about, when the tragic death of George Floyd really energized the Black Lives Movement, I got a lot of phone calls. I got some phone calls from dear friends of mine who don't look like me. And one of those phone calls, I'm so happy to be able to report, was from Hope. And so Hope was one of the many who wanted to be an ally. What do I do? What do I say? I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to do the wrong thing. Reggie, can you tell us if you received those phone calls, and just kind of give us an idea of how you were responding during those times?
Yeah, we received some of those phone calls, and me, myself as a Black man, really engaged with our membership that would ask me. I am a pretty transparent, so Black, white, whatever your color, religious background, I am open for discussion, and I am not easily offended. So I try to have both ears on, even if it's something offensive. And so, so you can have the discussion, and you can also have this back and forth dialogue to give a perspective to someone else, And so I received those calls as a Black man growing up here in America, and in an urban area in the Washington, D.C. area. I've traveled the country, and I've seen and experienced quite a bit. And it just really has energized me to do more. But hearing the death of George Floyd and many others before him, and others that have been shot, incarcerated, etc., after him, it's heartbreaking. And I hate to say it, I have seen this before. And so I was unfortunately quite pleased to see that the momentum around his death has helped to push the movement. And also it's opened the door for not only Blacks, but other races to join in the cause for the mistreatment of Blacks. Black lives do matter. And also, as you hear in the media, other lives matter as well. But Black men taking up a chunk of the incarcerated population in prison is unacceptable. Black men not really graduating from high school and college and higher education is unacceptable. The career path and the pathways and opportunities for Black men, women, and anyone, to be frank, is unacceptable. And so we need to address it, not necessarily always to be, it does make you angry, but you need to really address it, articulate it, and point it out, and really just engage in a dialogue. So I broke my heart to see his tragic tragedy unfold before us. But as a Black man, unfortunately, I have seen that side, whether it's through police, through Black on Black violence, through others in our community, the impact of drugs on families and friends, what's going on in the foster care system. I see a lot of those pieces just through the eyes of my own family members, and also being a consumer of the news. And so every day I've tried to just do something different to help give access and opportunity and a voice. Anyone calls me, just like Hope called and said, hey, we wanted this program. Yes, there's really not a hesitation. I'm going to engage in any way I can to really get the word out and to help people and really make this world a better place. That's my goal. And that's the position that my parents have raised me to do every day. And I'm charged with that effort.
Yeah, again, there's so much connectivity between some of the things that you've experienced, and not only inside the corporate walls, but outside of the corporate walls. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting how some of the things that you learn just respective to surviving, right? You mentioned the word earlier, you mentioned the word hustle, right? And it's really taken a lot of things that you learn as you were growing up in the, I'll call it the urban experience, and applying it to corporate cultures as well. Tell me a little bit about how you've maneuvered that throughout the years.
Well, it is tricky, and sometimes you do find jealousy, whether you're from colleagues that are Black or white. If people gravitate to you and they enjoy your company, you have access. So, I've been unfortunately experienced Black managers that were against me, mm-hmm. and even in the sense where I was helping them to expose them to other things, chose to do the other. And so that's, short-sightedness on their part. But I've also had some fabulous Black managers. I've had some fabulous white managers, Indian managers. It's just, it's a variety. I remember working for one company and was having a problem with a white manager. And this individual was just kind of bad-mouthing me around the company. And some of the managers came to me and said, something's wrong. And they gave me a task, and it was interesting. They gave me a task to go do something. And so 2 weeks later, I came back. Here's the task, done. He looked at me, threw it in the trash, and it said, we just had to verify it wasn't you. Wow. And so we had a discussion. This was a white manager, and I had a discussion with him, and he was honest. He said, we think it might be racial. We're paying attention to it, but we're tackling all angles.
Right.
Unfortunately, a lot of the senior executives in that company knew me from a prior life, so I was able to kind of navigate and get to that point. But I did happen to tell the manager, I said, wow, I didn't even really think about that. Right. It was rape, And I looked at him and I just got quiet and I said, wow, if it is, then you guys need to do something. And then 2, this probably just sound terrible. I am just not going to be a fan of his career and will make my hobby to ding and kick him every minute I get. So, I don't know how mature that is, but and it's a small world. And I won a big award, Black Engineer of the Year. And
congratulations, by the way. That's a big deal.
Yeah, in 2009, and then to have some of these same folks come back and want to all of a sudden connect to me on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
it's just kind of interesting.
It is very interesting.
So you kick dirt in someone's face, and then you want to come back and shake their hand. I said, well, I forgive people, but I don't forget.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm not a vengeful person. But I don't forget, and I don't think people do forget.
Yeah.
And so, it's been a trial and error, and also seeking mentors, and also talking to other Blacks, whites. And so, I think I'm not a fan of always just being put in the special Black program track. I want to be in and I advocate for my staff and other colleagues in the field to be in the best program.
Yes.
I don't want just the Black program.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Thank you. That sounds nice, but I want individuals to be in the best program, the best tracking, and connect with the best networks. It's not just about being in a Black network or being in a white network. So I think it's a little broader, and I challenge people to really kind of, step their game up. So my network has been fantastic. I've had a broad and diverse network that has mentored me. And so, and I can call on a broad range of friends, whether Jewish, Catholic, Indian, Black, white, Native American. And I bring that network, and it's funny, we have a discussion about historically Black colleges, and And some of them have, white and Hispanic, have come to me and said, Reggie, you think the institutions are ready for me? I said, I think they are ready for you, but you're going to need some cover. You know, our institutions are very protective. We do have white executives within the ranks of some of these institutions, but yeah, it's going to take some work. We have Black First still to this day in different pockets around the country and around the world. So just trying to be really fair and give access and get people out there to talk about it and really highlight it and fix it.
One of the things that I've always employed, you know, as I've navigated through the various corporate cultures is I grew up an athlete. In my family, a lot of men, a lot of boys, a lot of energy, right? And it was very competitive. Everything was very competitive. And so my mindset as I migrated through the corporate ranks, through and, you know, vertically and horizontally, was always just give me the chance to compete, right? And so I think one of the things that I really try to stress to people that don't look like me who are in the corporate world, and I was talking to a good friend of mine not too long ago, and I said this to him. I said, my mindset is I don't want to hand out or hand up. I just want to be able to compete, and I want to compete without having the burden of my skin color being an issue. Either I am the best athlete for the particular role or position, or I'm not. And I can shake the hand of the person who bettered me or bested me, and I can go about my life and not even bring race or racism or those kind of thoughts into play. Now, on the other side of that, I've been a recruiter, right? I've managed promotion programs. I've managed compensation structures. I've managed bonus structures. And so in those arenas, in those environments, questions pop up, you know? Okay, so Reggie and Bob had the same scores. Reggie and Bob have the same degrees. Reggie and Bob have the same experience. And why is it that Bob's just a natural for this position? You know, like, you need to explain to me what more, you know, could Reggie have done that he didn't? You know, he competed. You know, tell me how the finish line changed. Tell me the parameters of the course changed. Tell me how Reggie was deficient in areas where Bob was. And so when you start asking those questions, it gets a little difficult, and the conversation changes. Here's my next question for you. How do you make sure that you are mentally, emotionally ready to have those conversations when they come up?
I believe in presenting the facts. And so you have to have your facts together. You can't have some assumptions. And so being able to, and I think that the playing field is going to be uneven until, I think the problem is some organizations just do not have a clear career path. They need to talk to Johnny Taylor over at SHRM and get the career path from the lowest point in the company all the way up to the CEO and map those out in those recs and what's required to get to each level and audit those, you know, those jumps. But from what I've seen, a lot of organizations tend to not have a clear career path. And so you get these unequal things going on, let alone, and you said as a recruiter and compensation, every time I've picked up a new a team or management throughout my career, you know, I lift the covers and I look at the salaries and I'm like, oh my God, what happened here? And, you know, and who just let this go on forever?
Right. Yes.
And so, you know, and without fail, it always happens. Yes. And so it always becomes a discussion with each of the employees that work for me, how I don't reveal the inequities, but I start to work on the career path and ask them, where do you want to go? And begin to hammer away within the organization to try to fix that. And then also when you get raises and bonuses, you can start to try to even that stuff out. But lot of times I've been completely surprised. Or on the hiring end, when early on, I had two gentlemen that were coming to work for me, and the recruiter gave me their salary requirements, and they were coming from the South, and they were, and not to say you make less in the South.
No, I'm tracking.
That is the sometimes I'll have to go move down south to make less money. No, that's not true. And so depending on the cost of living, but they were coming up north to the DC area. And so I looked at their salaries. I'm like, oh man, I went and just added another 20, 30,000 to both of their salaries. Didn't tell either one of them.
Right.
Back to the recruiter, signed it. And then when they came in and got their first check, they said, Reggie, what you do? I said, I wanted to put you on a fair scale. I think you didn't negotiate well. And I want to put you on a scale because your increase in your bonuses are going to be based on that scale. So I want you to align with everyone else. So sometimes it takes a manager to be bold and really look out for his or her team. Yeah. And so I just think it also boils down, some of the inequities happen when there are just, bad managers in a bunch, and they're not allowed to really lead, to make decisions, and to have discussions about how to make things equal and really to empower your team. Whenever I have a team that works with me, I ask them, what do you want? What do you need? Let's go by it. My job is not to sit over your back, read your emails, check the watch, what time you are here. Waste of time. You can get rid of that in the hiring process, but really to empower people to do their job and then also compensate them fairly, which makes sense. I've had teams. I had a gentleman that came to me one time. He was on an install, had to go to Alaska in January for me.
Oh my goodness.
He came to me and said, Reggie, can I get a pair of ski goggles? You're going to Alaska in January. Why don't you get a snowboard, a ski suit, some goggles, some gloves? And he looked at me and I said, go pick your outfit. Just give me the receipt so I can report properly. And he stayed on the road for me for about 2.5 months after just leaving Alaska around the country. I said, I just need you to knock out some business and, let me know if you have a dog, I want to go by and make sure it's alive. You need some grass cut.
Right. You're a good leader, Reggie. That's awesome.
Come back in the fish tank and everything is floating to the top. And the cat's kind of skinny and the dog is, dried up at the door.
Right.
Real bad thing. And so a lot of these things come down to really just, I think, bad managers in the batch and having a discussion and really mentoring them on how to treat people. I think a lot of times we don't know, or managers don't know, and employees sometimes don't know how to treat people. And anyone that works for me knows if you take issues with one of my employees, you can have a disagreement, but you're going to disagree respectfully. Yeah. And if you don't, then I'm going to come around and I'm going to address it in a manner that will not be respectful.
Right.
I'm going to bring it back to a norm to really command that presence and just say, you don't treat people like that. You don't talk to people like that. Do you talk to your mother like that?
Right.
Those type of words in front of your grandmother. And so kind of, some of the things people
do. You kiss your mama with that mouth?
Yeah. If you can show that to your mother and say that to your mother, then I guess I'm good, because I couldn't say it to my mother. Right. I do still have my teeth, right? But yeah, that just was not happening when I was growing up with my parents at all. You're going to show that level of disrespect. So I think it's how you manage people, how you treat people. And of course now I think we just have to have a nicer, kinder culture and foster more understanding. I think it's still going to be a little crazy with this election coming around. Yeah. A lot of people are not informed and not open to other sides, and so people are entrenching whether you are black or white.
Right. Now, Reggie, again, our theme for this conversation seems to be connectivity. So I'm just going to keep rolling with it.
Let's keep it going.
One of the things that I've done a lot of deep work in is culture. And when I try to explain culture, I'm often focusing on the culture clash. I can be very general and say culture is about tribalism, right? And usually when you use those terms together, people go, okay, I understand my tribe, your tribe, I got it. But sometimes we are in the midst of culture clashes, and even in relationships, right? Even in familial relationships, I always tell people, when they're about to get married, I remind them, I said, well, you might love this person deeply. I'm sure you all are going to have a wonderful life together, but just keep in mind, there's going to be a culture clash, and it's going to take you a while to develop that culture that is asymmetrical to both of your expectations, right? So I kind of get these strange looks, and inevitably about 6 months after the wedding, oh, now now I know what you mean. And so what I find in the workplace, and certainly you have a unique perspective from being in the C-suites, sometimes it's just a clash of culture. How I hear something, how I decipher something, how I take a meaning, my ladder of inference, how I make decisions, and that matrix that I pour information in, and then that kind of impacts my behavior. Tell me about your experience in terms of marrying cultures, right? You walk here, here's where Reggie's from, and here's where somebody else is from. You're in the C-suite, and now you've got to try to marry those cultures.
Yeah, and it's an interesting question, because I think there's a big culture gap in understanding. And one of the top consulting firms I worked for years ago, I actually started an internal group called the Global Exchange for Cultures, Customs, and Religion.
Oh, nice.
Now, it took a minute to get past the approval process with the word religion.
I'm sure.
And it's an international well-known consultant firm. But what I was trying to do is really, because they would have Black forums, Asian forums, and so I decided to try to create a forum that addressed a broad range of culture. There's art, there's music, there's food, there's dance, there's language, there's stories, there's and even at that time there was a Shia and Sunni. And so
yes,
the discussion between the differences there.
Hutu and Tutsi, right?
No. And so my thought was to put that stuff out there, you need to kind of, frame it and keep some guardrails on it to make it fair and not let it break out into something you don't want, but really to give an opportunity for a free exchange of culture, to embrace a wide array of culture. And experiencing cultures, just like if you travel around the world, you go to Spain, you're like, oh man, this is great, this food is great, the people are great. You go to Jamaica, oh my God, everyone's great. And so you experience culture as you go around the world and try to, it's beautiful, and try to squish all of that together is, I think, fascinating. I really haven't seen it on scale where I create this particular forum. I'm looking to try to do something like that again soon, but I was actually helping employees go see the Dalai Lama.
Yeah.
And so, they were like, wow. And so employees were sending me the link back to the doc, because I was working. So they sent me a link. We're at the Dalai Lama. He has this hat on. And, this is it. And they just were loving it.
That's all right.
And to have a Korean colleague take me to a Korean restaurant. And he said, Reggie, the food's good because everyone in here is Korean. I said,
yes.
Thanks. So I said, well, we're going to go to a soul food restaurant. We're going to go to a seafood restaurant. We're going to go, so really to have some fun with culture. And so I've always really supported a broad range of culture. If there's a lack of Black diversity, or if I see and it's funny because when I see a white Santa Claus, and I may have a diverse range of colleagues around me, I say, oh, maybe next year we should have a Black Santa Claus.
Right.
Oh, Red, did you just say that? I said, well, there's a Black Santa Claus right down the street from too far from my house.
Right.
So
I know plenty of them.
And you have to have, I think most people know that I'm going to try to have some fun. Life is way too
Oh my goodness. Wow.
By the time you have kids, you get married, you continue to live through a pandemic, a toxic presidential race, going to school, raising your kids, taking care of your parents, and they get sick. So there are so many things that can come at you at one time. The most you can do is try to help people laugh.
Yeah.
And try to understand some cultural differences. You can have discussions with white colleagues about rap. You can have discussions about hair. With when I was in college, I actually used to cut hair, and so I went to Lincoln, and so historically Black institution. All my roommates were Black, and I went to Temple for a year. I put the name.
Okay.
Went to Temple for a year for an exchange program, communication. All my roommates. So the initial request to me was, we'll pair you up with some of your classmates from Lincoln and me. I said, just throw me in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I had an Italian, Irish. I had a mix of all, ethnic groups in my roommates. And it was funny. One of my roommates was Irish. His hair is really straight. But he said, Reggie, you gave me the best haircut. I'm used to a scissor cut. And so we really just hit it off. And that was around the time when our Arsenio Hall show was on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so we sat and had a discussion over a period of that year with all my roommates about race, about what's offensive, and in a really open dialogue, which I think sometimes some whites are not necessarily afforded that opportunity to have that discussion without invoking some hostility in some Blacks.
Yes.
And probably vice versa. And so that does make me sad that sometimes you can't balance that to have that discussion. And I actually had that discussion with several of my white colleagues. I mean, I remember when I was getting my security clearance for one position, and one of my white colleagues, we were talking about race in the South, and I said, well, I have, my birth certificate, I have Negro. And she looked at me, but you're not born in the 40s. I said, no, I'm born in 1969. So
right.
I brought my birth certificate in and showed her and a few other white colleagues, and they said, wow, are you kidding me? Mm-hmm. I said, it's on the, it's on the paper. I can't force that.
It's there, man. It is a part.
Yeah, so it just opens up the dialogue to really have hopefully a fun discussion.
Yeah.
I think the route to humor will really open up different pathways. And so, I am always open to support the exchange of cultures, customs, understanding religion. And I think in the news recently, there was something tragic in Europe where a teacher mentioned, I guess was making some characters, references to Muhammad.
Yeah.
That went wrong.
It didn't go in the right direction, no.
It didn't go. And so you have to understand what hard lines are in different cultures. Mm-hmm. And really kind of understand where they come from on that perspective, and not joke around with it, but hopefully have a discussion to understand the guardrails, and understand and have a discussion. So it's always been a fun point to have culture. And
well, Dr. Smith, let me just say, and I mean this in all seriousness, and now that we've connected and we're going to stay connected, this I promise you. I am excited, willing, and very much able to help you with any culture activities or projects that you want to work on. But we'll talk about that offline, because there's one more question I need you to consider. The person who connected us does not look like us, right? And has a very different life experience. And I live vicariously through her. Mm-hmm. And I think she's a fantastic person. And it's interesting. We joke when Hope and I connected, this is fact, and this is going to go in the book that really illustrates our relationship when we get around to writing it. But the first time we actually connected, I was in the movie theater watching the Black Panther. And so we connected, and really from there developed a very good and meaningful friendship. She's very dear to me. And when we were starting this conversation and we were, trying to develop a structure for how we wanted to present to people that we thought would care about this particular topic, she made it a point to say, listen, I'm going to be on the background. This is your show. You do what you feel like you need to do with it. This is about your voice. And so since then, what I've tried to do for her, and she'll tell you, I'll send her random articles and, hey, read this. And, she'll send me articles. Hey, here's what I read today. What do you think? And so, and can we make this part of the show, by the way? And so speaking to Hope and Hope, and you all have a relationship, what advice would you give Hope in terms of being an ally? What would you say to her?
My advice to Hope is just remain who you are, open and true. And so just like I tell anyone that knows me, no matter what you can say about me, everyone's going to know there's only one facet to Reggie. There's only one side. I don't have any other things going on in the background, shell games and some other things of that nature. And so I tell people, just be true to who you are. And she has remained true to herself and engaging me and having a really good discussion and figuring out how do we get some more meaningful content out there to open up the dialogue for people to really have these fruitful discussions and talking about kids and graduation rates and kids and Black males getting out of school. And I'm just as concerned as there was an article in the Washington Post a number of years ago about white kids in rural West Virginia and their diet and what they're eating and their health standards. And so that concerns me just as much as, Black kids in my neighborhood. I like kids. I believe I'm going to try to help everyone, but I'm also going to make sure that Black children get a seat at the table. Everyone's going to be at the table, but I'm going to make sure that Black kids and Hispanic kids and white kids alike get a seat at the table. And so I'm about being fair and equitable and try to keep the playing field and teach people to get their hustle on and ask questions, work hard, and just try. I think every day is a new day to get up and try to get it right. And so I am an imperfect man, imperfect path, but I just get up every day around 5 a.m. and look in the mirror and say, well, it's another day. Let me see what I can do today. And you'll see, you'll just be able to just live a life. I think I was in a hospital one time and a young lady had her little kids and grandparents and kids running around. She didn't really have a good control of them. And so I kind of calmed the boy down, put my hand on his shoulder, said, come on, calm down, come on. To kind of lean forward the presence of a man. Not saying that women can't raise men, but the essence and the nature of a man in a boy's life is unique. And so calmed him down, and I ended up buying her and her kids breakfast.
Okay.
And the folks in the cafeteria said, wow, you just bought breakfast. I said, well, I see what's going on here. And I'm also perceiving some financial struggle in a grandmother. And so there's some folks missing from this picture. And she's shepherding these young kids around, and she's showing some stress to me. So I'm going to try to help her out. And I just watched everyone in the cafeteria just kind of look at me. And it's like, wow, he talks about it, but then I'll do it at the moment that it pops up in front of me. And so you try to, I'm not perfect. I will make mistakes to the day I die, but I will guarantee I will try to do and be a better man each day. And that's what Hope is, just being true and authentic. And same for you, Tony. We all just try to be who we are and go out and help folks that are trying to do. Karma comes back around to people that are out there doing the bad thing.
Sure.
And often I tell employees that have come to me about other employees that are problem employees, I said, stop getting stressed out about it. Just let this stuff hang out there for a little bit longer. They think no one's watching, anyone's saying anything.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What goes around comes around is for sure. Certainly a philosophy I live by.
You gotta be decisive and make a really make a strike, and what you do is make a point.
Yeah.
People that you're taking care of, your staff and those around you, that you will react. And hopefully it teaches the other person a lesson too, that, they need to clean up their act. So.
Outstanding.
Way to go, Hope.
So Hope, thank you for making the correction. And Reggie, thank you for appearing on our show. I'm going to leave the last question for Hope. She has spent a lot of years developing this platform. She's spent a lot of years developing her portfolio. She is one of the most professional and proficient people that I know. And she's also one of the most conscientious, which really has been the foundation and the bedrock of our relationship. So Hope, over to you for the last question and to close us out for the evening.
Well, thank you both for such a great conversation. I'm really, really thrilled that you came and talked to us, Reggie. The work you're doing at USDLA is really fascinating and transformative, and it's wonderful to watch that organization morph. And Tony's such a wonderful, thoughtful man. And I think that's really the thrust of this, that we are all the same, right? And we can always pick out differences. I know when I was a student in Israel, it struck me so profoundly, here we are all Jewish, but there's infighting between the different, whether how religious you are. And I thought, this is just human nature, right? That when you don't feel safe and comfortable in your own skin at times, I'm not saying that this is what's going on in Israel, but, that you look for like what's different and what's the same. Right. So this conversation really is just about what do we do so that we know that we are all in this together. That is my mission with Incandescent Women, where we stand together, right? We push back against abusers, we push back against anything that's not good to women. So I guess my last question to you would be, what is the one bit of advice that you can offer our audience as they go through their day when they wake up tomorrow?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. Aim to be authentic and compassionate. Exude compassion. And that will allow you to open your ears and understand and share of yourself with others in a meaningful way.
Beautiful. Perfect. Well, thank you, Reggie Smith, Dr. Reggie Smith, the chairman of the U.S. Distance Learning Association, and Tony Farmer, our host. Both of you gentlemen are in Washington, D.C. And good luck during this very volatile campaign. Batten down the hatches.
Thanks, Hope, and thanks, Reggie. Appreciate you.
Thank you both for having me here today.
Absolutely. You are listening to the Black Lives Matter radio show on the Incandescent Radio Network. I'm Hope Katz Gibbs, your co-host, or actually probably the producer. I think I might change our titles, Tony. Tony Farmer is our host, and again, Dr. Reggie Smith. We will talk to you next Sunday with our next guest, so tune in then. Thank you for listening. So that's all for today's episode of the Black Lives Matter radio show on incandescentradio.com. We have an amazing lineup of future guests, just like you heard on today's show. So be sure to tune in for another episode and tell your friends about us so they can listen too. If you or someone you know should be a guest on our show, send me an email, hopekatzgibbs@gmail.com, and we'll be in touch. Again, this is blacklivesmatterradioshow.com on the Incandescent Radio Network. We look forward to talking to you. Until then, stay safe and be well.